You're listening to the Grit to Growth podcast. Real talk with real business owners and professionals who built their freedom the hard way and now want more time, money, and impact.
Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Patricia Acevedo Fuentes. She goes by Patri. Patri is an architect and community leader in Rapid City, South Dakota. She's passionate about creating an equitable approach to design. With more than 20 years of experience, she brings cultural sensitivity, expertise, and creativity to the projects that make places and spaces more inclusive. Patri, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So let's start here. You talk about creating an equitable approach to design. For some of the listeners who maybe aren't in architecture, what does that mean in practice?
So I appreciate the question and that we're starting right off the bat, hitting it heavy, right? So an equitable approach to design has to do with who has access to architectural services and good design. So as background, I did my undergrad in architecture in Puerto Rico. I did my master's degree in the United States, and they both approach architecture in a very different way. In Puerto Rico, it is very community oriented. You are designing for the people, for the site, for the place that you are going to build in. And in the United States, as a generalization, and this is unfair, but it's as a generalization, the architect is like the master builder who knows everything. And we impart our greatness, our design, all of the things that we know, our education, onto the people or the community that we are designing. So once I was named a Bush Fellow in 2021, I really wanted to understand how can we broaden who gets good design and who deserves a service, because I see architecture as a process and not so much as the product. You will end up with a space, a building, whatever it is. But for me, architecture is really, how do we get there? How do I interact with you in order to get to where we need to go, which will be a product. But it's really that, how do we open it up and democratize the design process for people, instead of it being this very obscure and very elitist way to see it.
I think that is a beautiful way of explaining it there.
Thank you.
I've heard from the owner of our company, Mailbox. He likes to always say architecture is an art form, and that kind of seems your line of thought there too.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I love looking at art that makes me feel something. If it makes me feel uncomfortable, I am happy that art made me feel a certain way. If I just pass by something, it doesn't capture my attention. And it just doesn't make me feel like anything. So architecture, I want architecture to make people feel a specific way. If you go to a doctor's office, I want you to feel comfortable. I want you to feel like you're the person who's in control and somebody's providing a service for you, right? And not the other way around. So I agree with that art is architecture is an art form.
Absolutely. So you hit on that you came from Puerto Rico. I saw in your bio that you've lived in New York even, and now you're out here in Rapid City, which is obviously very different from those two locations. Could you kind of talk to me how living there has kind of give you that cultural perspective that influences you now?
Absolutely. The funny thing is that you skipped a couple of states that I lived in between.
Wow.
So it gets even worse. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I lived there until I was 23, I think. So I had finished my undergrad and I had worked there as an architectural designer. Then I went to do my master's degree in upstate New York. And I was there for a couple of years. I fell in love with the guy who's now my husband, and he was also in architecture school, but also doing ROTC, which meant that then we were going to go into the
Travel.
military life.
Yep.
So after New York, I actually, we lived in Florida, where I practiced as an architect. And after Florida, we went to Texas, where again I practiced as an architect. And then we finally ended up at Ellsworth up here, Ellsworth Air Force Base here in Rapid City. So from Puerto Rico to New York to Florida to Texas to South Dakota.
Wow. That is quite the journey. And all very different places and different climates, right?
Absolutely, right? And like different cultures, if you think about it, as well. Like, how do people gather? How do like communities like represent their values as well? It's very, very different.
How can you give me some examples how you bring those different perspectives into what you're doing now?
So what I have, the way I see myself, I end up being a bridge between what people need and want in terms of architectural services specifically, right? And the product that we're going to end up at the end. So I am that bridge that gaps the space in between and provides that service. When we lived in Florida, for example, it was less Florida, it was more of the South because we lived in Pensacola. So it was a really multicultural in all honesty, right? Like Pensacola was a settlement like hundreds of like years ago. It had like strong groups of like different ethnicities that lived there. So they did things in a very different way. I was in Texas. It was I believe it's like close to the geographic center of Texas. It was a completely different set of values. Like one of the favorite things people said was that there were more churches than gas stations, which was true at the time we lived there, right? So they saw themselves as the value of church going more than I had been evident when I lived in Pensacola specifically, right? And now that we live in the western side of the state, things are extremely different again. I had never had encountered like indigenous cultures before. I had worked with other cultures, but just not like the Lakota specifically, and not indigenous, right? So then the values change entirely. I will say that for Rapid City and the Black Hills, I am surprised, so gladly surprised every time at the level of how much people give as volunteers. It's either time or money, and sometimes it's both. And none of the other communities we lived in before had that as one of their like preeminent values. Like people don't talk about it, but everybody serves in a committee. Everybody serves on a board here. So there's a way of like elevating the community that I hadn't seen before. And that's one of the reasons we decided to stay. My husband ended up separating from active duty in 2012, and we decided to make the Black Hills our home. And that was one of the reasons. It's very community based, very similarly to how I grew up in Puerto Rico.
That makes sense. So you've been doing this for, 20 plus years. What's one of the biggest challenges that you've faced, and what did you learn from that?
So I'm going to give you two. One is, I call it the surprise of walking in, right? Like, it doesn't matter how many times I draw something, I explain something to a client. If they have a challenge visualizing things, it's always going to be a surprise. And it's not how it was on their heads, right? So what I have learned now is to use as many images as possible for them to tell me what they like and what they don't like. And with Pinterest and social media, it is so easy to say, these are the things that I like and these are the things that I don't like. And then we dig deeper and talk about, well, how does that make you feel, right? Like, and it's not unlike going to get a haircut and say like, okay, really like this, kind of looks like a mullet, but I don't want it to look like a mullet, like not like this, right?
Hey, mullets are in now.
Well, yes, some of them are. See, so it's getting to that like nitty gritty, because construction is probably going to be the largest investment that anybody is going to make, whether it's an organization or whether it's somebody building their own house. It's one of the largest investments that people are going to make, and it is permanent and it is powerful, right? My house was built in 1919. It's been here for a long time, right? Like, so making sure that we make it right is really important. On the other hand, I have made mistakes of how do I relate to people as well, making assumptions about it. And now I walk in like in the most humble way that I can, and allowing the client to be the expert at their own thing. I am a tool, and I don't know if it translates. Like, I went to school in New York and the East Coast, and like the word tool is like a joke as an idiot, right? Like, so I say it in a way that is like very like disarming. I'm just a tool, and it's literally for them to be the experts at what they need, instead of me taking that learned concept of I tell the client what they need, which is what they taught in architecture school, and it never felt right to me. And I had some reactions from clients that it was evident that it wasn't what they needed either. So it's both are very humbling experiences when you have to go back on something built and like make it right for them, and also humbly apologize for making assumptions or coming in hot, right? When you just need to come in and be part of the team in order to be able to deliver what they want.
Has that happened to you before, where you're the breath of fresh air to someone who they maybe were upset about something, and you picked up on that, and you say it out loud to them, right? And then they're like, no architect has ever told me that. Something like that before, right?
It does. And it's really interesting because I as a bridge, right? I am the first one. So when countries are at war, bridges are the first thing to go down, because that is like the thing that unites two things. So I know I can be a lightning rod, and I know that if something is going to go down, it is easy to point at me. So that is like things that I am very aware of it. I had it like where I walk into a project and they're like, this is such a different way of doing things. Like, we have experienced this before, and like it felt like they weren't listening to us, or it felt like they wanted to do it their way with their vision and not with what we wanted. But it takes a lot of work and a lot of practice to do that, right? And it doesn't fit into the typical architecture process as well, right? Where there's a fee and there's a timeline and things need to be moving forward. So now I joke that I operate on the outskirts, on the outside of like the traditional architectural practice, because the way I do it just doesn't fit into the traditional way of doing things.
Yeah, don't be in the box, think outside of it, right?
Or figure out what it is that your clients need, right? Like, sometimes I lead from the front because they need me so I was the lead local architect for the Summit Arena, right? Like, their needs are very different from when I am working with Makpialuta, which is like Red Cloud Indian School, right? Like the cultures are very different. One, you need to lead one more from the front, be that project manager, like be like pounding on that schedule in a different way that when I sit down for a prayer circle in both like English and Lakota, because they're Jesuit and Lakota down in Makpialuta, where I am sitting down and I am part of that team instead of standing in front of the room. See, like,
that makes sense.
So it's,
very different, but
very
you're able
different.
to do both.
Yeah.
So what kind of projects or any initiatives going on right now or in the next 6 to 12 months that are you excited about?
That's a great question. So I'm going to say things about the Black Hills that I am not necessarily involved in. Like, I'm really excited about the amount of housing that we are bringing to the community. The eastern side of the state has, because of the density and the proximity to larger markets, that has come to all of you a lot easier. It is like 10% more expensive to build out here than it is there. We finally, in the last few years, were able to attract affordable housing developers that had been working in your community forever, but it was so hard to attract them to ours because it is like such a distance, right? So I am very
Logistically,
excited.
yeah, it's very,
Yeah.
it's tough to get to the Black Hills area.
Yeah, procuring materials is really hard. Also, finding labor. There's specific labor that we cannot get in the Black Hills, like terrazzo, which is just kind of like, when do you need terrazzo? Well, churches like terrazzo, right? Like, so there are different things that are very difficult to get here. We joke that we're like 2 weeks from everything. Like, it just feels that we're a geographical oddity in some ways. I am very excited by what Macpialuta Red Cloud is doing down in their campus with a new heritage center, with like just a master plan that they're working on. I am very excited by what I know Cheyenne River Housing Authority is doing, bringing housing to the reservation. There's just a lot of really cool things. I'm excited to see where the Rapid City area schools is going to go in terms of like building that infrastructure, because there's a massive need in our community. So there's Rapid City has been mid-leap for a very long time, and it feels like some of those pieces are starting to fall in place. I'm not the architect for any of those things, but I am a community leader, and I work in like either like public policy to support some of these things, or I work in different committees to be able to support some of the other efforts that I was like talking about. So that's what's
good.
coming for us, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So, would you want to maybe give the people kind of basically what is it that you want people to take away knowing about being an architect and how you can influence not just design, but also the community?
So, as I was saying earlier, architecture is permanent. What you build is going to be there for a very long time. And it is also very powerful. Like, architecture can be extremely hostile when you think about it, right? Like a space where you feel that you need to be whispering a lot of times, or park benches that don't let you lay down and rest. Like, all of those things can become fairly hostile in what we call, in a nerdy way, the built environment. So I want like people to really think about, when they walk into a space, how does it make you feel? So when your community is building a school, or your community is like developing a park, or your community is like creating any of these things, and you have the ability to go in for public input, you talk about how you want it to feel, right? Like, we're going through the comprehensive plan update in Rapid City, and it is so important that people show up and talk about what they value. Is it bike lanes? Is it more like electrical car infrastructure? Is it like, what is it that we value as a society? When you go back in history, like, and you think about the Roman Colosseum, you know that the Roman Empire valued entertainment because it was a place of entertainment, right? Like, the Great Wall of China speaks about power and being able to control borders. Like, so the Summit Arena speaks to something in Rapid City. Like, the school systems speak of something, and they're going to be there forever. That's the other thing, right? Like, a school building, we're renovating school buildings that have been around for 50, 60, 70 years. So thinking about what it is and what do we value. And I'm going to take a sharp turn for just a sec and talk about
That's totally fine.
Schools, right? Like, when we design schools, when you go to an old school, there's massive windows. And if you look at newer schools, the windows are getting smaller. And that is because of school shooters and like safety and things like that. But is there a way in which we can have both safety and that needed daylight for the students to stay concentrated, to like have that health benefit, that like biophilia is what they call it, right? Like, being able to look outside and see nature brings to you.
Wellness design.
Yeah, designing for wellness, right? Like, offices should have windows and whatnot, but there's always cost and security. And that's when I talk about, what do we really value? Like, that's what I want to leave with. It's like, is it like, what is more important to us, and can we have them both?
Yeah, I think that's a great mission to have.
Ooh, it's a hard one. Not always do we win, but like, I have a rule that if I can if I can create a change in something, I have to raise my hand. If I can say like, ooh, I think we can do this better this way, I raise my hand. Otherwise, I don't get to complain about it.
I kind of hitting on that in the sense of you asking people to show up to these community meetings and things like that. I think that it goes hand in hand with you can't really go complaining about something if you never put the input into it, right? Like the whole voting system type thing that's their messaging.
Absolutely, like school bonds, we're having an entire like parks master plan created, like comprehensive plans, like they ask for input. Otherwise, somebody at the top is going to set those priorities for you and your community. Like, why not show up?
Yeah. Well, Patri, for listeners who want to connect or learn more about your work or what you're doing or initiatives or just get more educated, how could they connect with you?
I am all over social media. Mostly on Instagram is where I post most of my stuff, and it's Patri ACV2 out there. I'm always happy to entertain any conversations. As you can see, I love to chat. I love to talk about like how other people see the world as well, and like how can I help make it better. So, yeah.
Great. Well, Patri, thank you for sharing your perspective and passion today. If you'd like to learn more about her work, please be in touch. And until then, we'll see everyone on the next one.
Know someone with serious grit and a great growth story? Send them our way at grittogrowthpodcast.com/guest.